Hi, everybody. I'm Tahina Day O'Connor from the PAGNI Health and Research Foundation. Welcome to PAGNI staff and to CUNY staff. I'm going to start in just another minute or so. While you are waiting, if you're here to get CMEs today, there in the chat box, you will see the link to sign in for your CMEs. Remember to fill out your evaluation to receive your full CME. And hang on for the whole hour if you are looking for the full 1.0 CME. Okay, well, it's 12:03 and I will start on time because we do have full agenda. I'm so excited that you are all joining us today. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy day to join us for the All of Us Research Hub fundamental presentation where we give you a broad overview of this very exciting database, All of Us. Next slide. Today's program does have 1.0 CME credit available, and the activity sign-in code today is 60BIRL, and that will expire tomorrow at noon. So make sure that you either text the code to 828-295-1144 or visit eeds.com. The event disclosures for today, Kelsey Mayo and Courtney Wallen have no relevant financial relationships to report in the last 12 months with the commercial interest, and this activity is not commercially supported. Next slide. So today's sponsors of this workshop are myself from the PAGNI Health and Research Foundation, Dr. Elizabeth Cohn from Hunter College, City University of New York, and our own PAGNI Rhonda Truesdale, who is the Director of Research and Innovation. And next slide. And I'm going to hand it off to Rhonda. She can introduce herself and talk about the series agenda.
Thank you so much and welcome everyone. This is the first of a three-part series. Today we're going to be going over the fundamentals of the researcher workbench, how the All of Us program has gone about developing this and beginning to understand what can be done with this. On May 10th, next Monday, there's going to be a deeper dive into actually how to start a project. And I'm going to be doing a short demonstration along with my IT colleague, Zoe Zhang, for a project that we've already been working on. And then for May 17th on Monday, we're going to do another dive into how to do a research project, but this time we're going to be focusing on public health and answering different types of questions other than sort of a purely disease-focused question. So we look forward to hearing from the group out in Chicago about their project. Next slide.
Thanks, and I'll take it from here to introduce our speakers, but I just want to say we want to welcome everyone again from PAGNI and from CUNY. Many of us have been involved in this program since its inception 5 years ago, so we are so excited to see this come to fruition. This is NIH's largest and most diverse data set, and we've been building it for this whole time. So this opportunity to now see it produce some research results that can really help the health of the community is quite amazing. I want to thank our presenters, Courtney Wallen from NIH and Kelsey Mayo from Vanderbilt, and the support team at PAGNI, who have been amazing in terms of partnering to do this. And just 3 quick reminders. It's part of a 3-part series. You must sign up for each part individually. So we hope you'll sign up again and join us Monday and the following Monday, but please fill out the links. This session is being recorded. So please know that you are being recorded as part of this session. And we will access to this data set is done through ERA Commons. So for CUNY people, an ERA Commons login is available through your Grants and Contracts office. And with that, I am delighted to turn this over to Courtney Whalen and Kelsey Mayo, who will talk to us about the objectives for today, which are the mission and values of the All of Us Research Program and the unique resource that's being developed within. So we are delighted to present this program and thankful to our speakers.
Thank you so much, Liz, and thank you all so much for being here. I am thrilled to be here today with my colleague, Dr. Kelsey Mayo, to present on the All of Us Research Program and our Research Hub. Next slide. Thanks. I want to start off by noting that with such an ambitious initiative involves commitment and work from so many folks, including, of course, our participants and our community partners. Our participants are by far our most important partners for this program. Without them, none of this science would be possible. And so want to start by thanking them and also our community partners who have been so essential for helping us to engage with communities from across the country. Next slide. And here we also want to thank all of our consortium partners made up of various teams and collaborators. We have so many partners who truly make this program possible. So want to always start with a thank you. But with that, let's dive in. Next slide. Thanks. So first question is, what is the mission of our program, of the All of Us Research Program? Our mission, as noted in the middle here, is to accelerate health research and medical breakthroughs, enabling individualized prevention, treatment, and care for all of us. But what does this really mean? And how do we go about actually enabling medical breakthroughs for all of us? Starting in the top left-hand corner, it means nurturing relationships with 1 million or more individuals from all walks of life, from various communities, and bringing them into the program, becoming true partners. Also catalyzing a robust ecosystem of researchers who are interested in using the data in order to make transformational breakthroughs. We're also building and maintaining a strong All of Us team who are committed to the mission and values of this program. And then we're also delivering the largest, richest biomedical data set ever. We're delivering this resource to the scientific community through our Research Hub, which Dr. Mayo will walk through in just a bit. Next slide. And we are meeting our mission by making decisions based around our 8 core values. These are always at the top of mind. First, participation in the program is open to all. So we're building a program where participation is open to all individuals living in the US. We're eager to enroll 1 million or more individuals into this program. Right now, enrollment is restricted to individuals over the age of 18, but we are aiming to enroll children and others in the very near future. We're also committed to ensuring that we are building a cohort of participants who truly reflect the rich diversity of the US, with an emphasis on bringing in communities who have been historically underrepresented in biomedical research. We're also building this community with a focus on participants as partners. And so this means that All of Us includes participant representatives in every level of our program, including our governance structure. We're also aiming to be transparent about all of the program efforts through our communications and engagement in order to earn trust of our participants and all of our partners. Number 5 here is participants will have access to their information, and we're already beginning to return some information and results to our participants. Number 6, data will be accessed broadly for research purposes. And again, Dr. Mayo will walk you through the publicly accessible parts of our Research Hub today. We are also applying the latest technology measures to ensure the highest security and privacy to protect our participants' data. And last but certainly not least, we believe the program will be a catalyst for positive change in research, creating a program that will make large and positive impacts on individuals, communities, and biomedical research on a whole. Next slide. So I've just shared our mission and our core values. Much of what makes our program, sets our program apart can be summed up in 4 ways: our goals, our breadth, our diversity, and our engagement. So much of this I've alluded to already, but just in quick sum, our goals, they're quite ambitious, but simple. We're not focused on a particular disease. We're really focused on enabling research across a wide variety of health conditions. In terms of breadth, as mentioned, the goal of the All of Us research program is to enroll 1 million or more participants from across the US and build the largest biomedical research database. In terms of diversity, we're committed to ensuring diversity, inclusion, and equity across all aspects of this program. And importantly, that's not limited to participation. We're also taking steps to ensure our researcher cohort reflects a rich diversity as well. And then engagement. We've created a community-based engagement infrastructure whereby our participants and our researchers are partners in this program. Next slide. With that, I also want to note our unique approach to data access. So as part of our goals, our breadth, diversity, and engagement, we have created a unique approach to data access, which has equity at top of mind. So as noted here, our aim is to have the data be available to all types of users. Our data collection will be continuous, so it's going to start small and grow over time. We are also adhering to the highest standards for privacy and security to protect our participant data. The data resources are centralized, tiered, and operate on a passport system of access, which promotes exploration. And I believe Dr. Mayo will speak to this in just a bit. And project information will be made public and auditable by anyone, and that's part of our commitment to transparency. And much of that you can already see through some of our publicly accessible information online. Next slide. So around the diversity of our research cohort, as mentioned, the goals, breadth, diversity, and engagement are reflected in the unique different approach we're taking to engaging researchers. We're really aiming at co-designing this product with our researcher community and are absolutely committed to ensuring the diversity of this research cohort, just as we have for our participant cohort. So we want to engage diverse communities on our data platform and diverse communities who can bring perspectives informed by a broad range of expertise and experiences. As noted here, we're eager to promote team science and ensure inclusion of researchers from all demographic backgrounds across all career levels and institution types, so that individuals can work together to cross boundaries and create and maintain an environment where interdisciplinary teams can really excel. And so as noted here, we know that creating a demographically diverse researcher cohort will promote ethical, non-stigmatizing use of our data and generate outcomes that can create and return the greatest value to our participant communities. We're also mindful of different career levels and encouraging students and early career investigators in particular to bring their fresh, creative perspectives to our platform and propel innovative research outcomes. And of course, we want to ensure access for researchers from all institution and organization types so that we really are establishing a truly equitable resource for all. Next slide. And once again, our program sets itself apart from others because of our scientific framework, which is outlined here. As a broad research program, All of Us is building a data platform to support research on many aspects of health and are not doing so with a single medical or biological research question in mind. Rather, our scientific framework, which is outlined here, focuses on wellness, reduction of health disparities, improved risk assessment, earlier and more accurate diagnoses, and improving health outcomes. And to understand that prevention is just as critical as treatment. But the key element on this slide here is really that word enable. The All of Us research program is enabling research, not performing the research. We're looking to researchers to work with us to analyze these data and make new discoveries that may not have been possible before. And therefore, really by the very nature of our program, we are promising innovative and impactful research that will likely help to advance clinical and translational science and positively impact a variety of communities. Next slide, and I think this is my last one. This is intended as just an example use case illustrating how all of us can support and enable that research in a specific domain while still being quite broad in its possibilities. So a range of questions are listed here that we envision our program being able to answer in years to come. For example, around risk and prevention, how can environmental exposures cause unhealthy living? For health equity, what are the most important factors relating to socio-demographic health disparities in wellness? And treatment and outcomes, how do non-pharmacological interventions impact health and resilience? So with that, I've given hopefully a broad overview of our program, our mission, and our values. I'll turn to my colleague, Dr. Kelsey Mayo, to dive into the Research Hub data platform.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wallen, and thank you to all of our sponsors and hosts today for this amazing opportunity to speak to the research communities that are in New York. So my role within the program is the manager of our scientific product portfolio at the All of Us Data and Research Center. And my favorite part of my job is being able to raise awareness about this exciting resource amongst a number of researchers out in the community, and also to listen to your feedback. So as Dr. Wallen mentioned earlier, we can essentially co-design something with you that really helps us together accelerate precision medicine and health. And so my goal today is to give you a little bit more information about our research hub. And one of the things that I find most helpful is to describe a bird's eye view of data and how this flows through the research program. So if you look at this slide here today, you can see that we were collecting a number of different data types from all of us research participants. So these data types include surveys where we do self-assessments of things like participants' personal medical history, their demographics, their family health history. And over time, the program is continually evolving the set of surveys that we're offering to our research or to our participants. And the most notable recent example of this includes a COVID-19 specific survey that we released this past year. And so we have a set of surveys. These are growing over time. But in addition to this self-assessment information, which is so critical for research, we're also fortunate that our participants are providing electronic health record data. So participants can choose to provide us with electronic health records. These records are longitudinal. So when they come into our research data set, we're able to get information going back in time. Some participants are also able to contribute physical measurements as part of baseline evaluation. This is due in part to the fact that we know not all of our participants may have electronic health records or records which are available to contribute as part of the program, but there's still some very key anthropomorphic data, height, weight, blood pressure type information, which is so valuable for research. And so many of our participants have contributed these physical measures. Excitingly, we're also working with partners on the cutting edge and expanding our data types to include mobile and wearables technology. We have already included some data, for example, from Fitbit devices, and we're actively working to expand these data over time. And then finally here on the screen, you can see we note biospecimens, so specifically saliva, urine, and blood, which have been collected from participant partners. And the first data, which will be derived from this and made available for research, would be genomic information. And so if you look at the organization of the slide here today, you'll note that while we are actively working on expanding the data types which are collected, those bracketed at the top are ones which are already available for research. And so surveys, electronic health records, physical measures, and wearables data all come in to a raw data repository. And then these go through a very careful curation process. And that curation process is important because it allows us to harmonize this information, organize it in a way that it is more useful for research, and very importantly, apply privacy methodology to protect our participant partners. Once this curation is complete, we have what we call a curated research data set, and that data set is what's available through our research platform known as the Research Hub. And before going into that research platform, I just wanted to talk about a few more aspects of that data. As Dr. Wallen noted earlier, a core principle and value of this program is protecting our participant privacy. Privacy first, privacy always. We must build a trusted system. And similarly, we are committed to broad and open access. We need to maximize the scientific utility of this resource we're building together. And that balance results in a philosophy that we describe as sharing this information widely and wisely. And we take a number of different steps to do this, one of which I want to speak to today is that our data and resource access is tiered. So I lovingly call this the birthday cake diagram. And in this birthday cake, you can look at the bottom slice here as public information. So if you remember back to the bird's eye diagram that I showed of our curation process, we do have a curated research data set, and we do things to transform it so that we can share it with the research community. One of the things we do is we aggregate that data so that you're looking at summary counts, buckets of 20, you're not looking at individual participant data. And that information is one we can share publicly because it presents no risk to participant privacy. And so if you notice here on the screen, this information is available to anyone. And if you have a browser window open on your computer now, you can go to databrowser.researchalofus.org and start exploring the public version of that research data set even now. The other data that I want to talk about is this registered tier of information. So this is the research data set in a form where you still have participant level information, but importantly, we have taken steps to ensure participant privacy such that this is a de-identified data set. It does exceed HIPAA safe harbor standards. And as the name implies, it requires that you as a researcher be registered and approved to access it. So the secure enclave within our research hub, which researchers use to access and analyze this data, is known as our researcher workbench, and I'll get into that shortly. Already, we've released data from over 315,000 of our participants for research. And as I described in that first bird's eye view diagram, our participants are contributing a variety of different data types. So all 315,000 have contributed some survey information. The second line on the table here, you see COPE survey. That stands for essentially the COVID-19 focus survey that was released as part of our COVID-19 related efforts over the past year. So of these 315,000 participants, a little over 63,000 have answered at least one of the COPE surveys. 265,000 or so have contributed physical measures. Over 200,000 have contributed electronic health records. And we're excited that we've had our first pilot of Fitbit information as our inaugural wearable device data, which is available for research. Also critically important is that the participants who are included in this research data set are diverse. And approximately 78% are considered historically underrepresented in biomedical research by one or more categories. Very importantly, a little under 50% are of non-white race or Hispanic Latino ethnicity. And you can see many other important categories here on the slide. And I think that the take-home message is, number one, I just would like to reiterate a thank you to our community partners, the partners in the program who are helping us enroll participants that have not had this opportunity before. And number two, I see this slide as a call to action for our research community that I think that so often we have been discussing the inequities that we see in health research. And I think the All of Us research program is poised to enable us as a community to really make progress and change paradigms. So I like to highlight this. And with that, I've just walked through some key aspects of our data that I think is really important to understand as you're considering joining our research community. And that being said, I'd like to now move on to the platform through which we invite you to join this community and learn a little bit more about not only the data, but the tools as well that we have available to access this data and analyze it. Our All of Us Research Hub can be found at researchallofus.org. I encourage you to pull up this website if you haven't done so already. It's essentially the front door that we welcome you to come in and learn, discover, and connect with the program in our growing research community. We have two important aspects of this hub, all of which is designed at becoming a home for the All of Us data set, research tools, and research projects. And so at the beginning of the next few slides, I'll be talking about our public website, researchallofus.org. And then I'm going to move briefly into that secure enclave for analyzing that registered tier of data, the researcher Workbench. So let's start at the public website. Within the public website, you'll notice a number of different tools. So we do have public tools to enable researchers to learn about our data. You'll see here on the slide, and I'll walk through a little bit more detail in the following slides, some of my favorite tools that I've picked to highlight today. The first one are our data snapshots, the second of which are Survey Explorer, and then our data browser. So I'll walk through each of these in the next few slides. So if you're following along on our public website, you can go to our Data and Tools menu and view our data snapshots and see a page which I like to think of as, when I have family members that ask me, well, how is the program doing enrolling participants, or what's the status towards the march to 1 million or more? This is a great page for getting a real-time view of participant enrollment, not only the counts of participants who have currently enrolled in the program, but also things like where are they coming from across the country? What states are these participants coming from? What are other key demographics? How many biospecimen have they contributed? So this is a great sort of real-time snapshot of participant enrollment and contributions from the program. Under that same menu, we also have a tool which we note as our data browser. So again, if you're following along, you can click our data browser here. And this is the tool I referenced earlier, and personally one of my favorites because it gives you an opportunity to get hands-on with the research data set. If you're curious whether or not we have information that might be directly relevant to your topic of study, this tool is where you can search through that public information and see what data the All of Us program might already have to support that research and how much. And so you can get a sense from the screenshot here on the slide of some of the different data types that I noted earlier. So from electronic health records, we have information about conditions from billing codes. We have information about labs and measurements, procedures, et cetera. We also have information from all of the core surveys. So information about basic demographics through personal medical history. And I noted in a couple of places this COVID-19 survey. On the live version of the website, you can scroll further down and see a handful of other data types. But what I encourage you to do, if you haven't already done so, is take advantage of this tool to do something like search across all of the different data types to see, for instance, if you're interested in studying type 2 diabetes, if you do a search across type 2 diabetes, what EHR information might we have that's relevant to type 2 diabetes? And what survey information might come out of, for instance, a personal medical history survey relevant to that particular condition or disease? So you can do a search across everything, or if you're a researcher who's interested in one specific area, you want to dive deeply into our COVID-19 survey as an example, you can simply click on this tile and go through a much more deep explanation of what participants have answered, which questions within this series. So again, just if you haven't done so, please check out our data browser. It's a great tool to get started. Still on this public website, another thing that we're committed to doing is really sharing those projects, stories, and different publications that our researcher community are making possible through all of us, and sharing those in a way that is very public and transparent. So on researchallofus.org, we not only make note of publications which have used the resource, but we go one step further and we actually show something we call a research projects directory. And I'm going to go into that in just a little bit more detail in the next slide. So again, if you're following along under our Discover tab, you can start to see work that the research community is actively already doing within the Research Hub. And so not only do we have the research projects directory, which I'll show now, but we also have some really fun information in our spotlights and publications. So this project directory that you can see a screenshot here on the right side of the page is another interactive tool. And as part of the conditions for accessing this resource, researchers are asked to tell us what they're doing with the data. So essentially, and I'll walk through this in a moment, as a researcher, you apply for and are approved for access as an individual. And then as an individual, once you have access to the researcher workbench, you have this flexibility to do a number of different projects on topics that might be relative to your research program. And every time you start up one of those projects, you just describe that project, its scientific objectives, the approaches that you're taking, and the anticipated outcomes. And so you can see here on the slide that we already have well over 540 different projects ongoing within the researcher workbench. And clicking into each one of these, you can see what are these projects and who is studying them. So it's a really great way of looking into the research that's already actively ongoing within the program. Another way that we like to give a megaphone to try and amplify the amazing work of the community is through our spotlight section. So this is a very new portion of our website, and we're really happy to have the ability here to highlight the incredible work that researchers within the program are doing. And I don't know if the thunderstorm that's on my end is coming through, but if you hear some strange background, it is raining here in Atlanta. So anyway, this is an area of our website that will grow over time. Personally, it's one of my favorite aspects of this website as well. And so you can see our first two spotlights, but we'll be again growing this over time and amplifying the voices of our community. So my hope is that you have not only heard a little bit today, but perhaps even as you consider exploring this a little bit further offline, that you might be interested in joining our growing research community. We really want to welcome you and extend an invitation. And if you are interested in applying to become an All of Us researcher, throughout the entire website, there's always this little orange button that says apply. And if you click this page, you'll see a 6-step process for applying to get that researcher passport. So the first step is one that we've talked about in brief today. It's using this public website to learn more about our data and our data access and use policies. And then once you've taken that step, researchers at this time must be affiliated with an institution that has signed a data use and registration agreement. If you would like to see whether or not your institution has signed that agreement, clicking this link, you'll see the full list of all the 200+ institutions who've already signed agreements. And if your institution isn't listed, there's a simple form to kick off that process. And I noticed that Dr. Cohen has made a note that CUNY and several other of the research institutions who are joining us today has already completed this agreement. And so we're really excited about that and the opportunity, because essentially that means for many of you on the call today, step 2 might already be checked off and you can proceed through to the next step where you create an account to register as a researcher. This is your researchallofus.org account. You connect that account with an ERA Commons account. Then you're asked to complete an all of us specific responsible conduct of research training. This takes about an hour, and you have to pass a knowledge assessment at the end before signing a code of conduct. And this process, steps 3 through 6, can take as little as 2 hours if you just want to do it in one setting and knock it out. Or you can come back over time. We recognize that not everybody at this time may have 2 hours to sit down and do this. So we hope that we give you that flexibility. So again, just highlighting some wonderful progress that has been made. And I'd like to quickly thank everybody on the teams that might be joining us that were part of making these agreements possible. So if you have contributed to that process, thank you for your work, and we really appreciate you. Oops. So with that, we've talked through our researcher public website and some of the information there. The next part of my talk, I'm going to go through that secure enclave, the next piece of our hub, which we call the researcher workbench. That account that we walked through, that 6-step process, is essentially what you do in order to access this researcher workbench. The workbench offers various analysis tools and resources. And so we'll go through this in a little bit more detail and paint an example of what each of these different aspects mean. But very importantly, researchers within the workbench operate in workspaces. So I like to think of this as the unit of a project within the researcher workbench. And each workspace has a number of different tools associated with it. So we offer notebooks, which are the initial analysis tool that we'll go into in a little bit more detail. We have a data set builder, which is a point and click tool that you can use to sort through the larger all of us data set to find the data which is relevant for your study. We also have a cohort builder tool, which you can use to build cohorts of participants that might have characteristics relevant to your particular study. And then off here to the side, you'll notice that we have our Workbench user support hub. So one really amazing thing about bringing you as the research community into the cloud to do this with us is that we can provide support at your fingertips right where you are. And so I'm going to talk about what types of support we offer researchers who are coming into this community or who are already researchers on the community. And again, this workbench is a collaborative place. We really hope to enable the types of team science that are so valuable in precision medicine research today. And so again, just looking at a different view of those tools I mentioned earlier, researchers can have a number of different workspaces, and each workspace essentially houses a project. You can share a workspace with researchers at your institution. For instance, I might be a principal investigator and have a clinician scientist and a data scientist on my team that are all working together on a specific project. And different members of my team might choose to use different tools. The data scientist might be very comfortable going to this Jupyter Notebook analysis tool. My clinician expert, however, might be the person who's really actively doing phenotyping and building cohorts of participants for this study. So I just want to impress upon you that not only can I share this with colleagues at my institution, but I can actually share across institutions as well. So I can invite, as long as there's a researcher that has been approved for access, if they're at a different institution, we don't put boundaries there. We want to make sure that you have the opportunity to collaborate as you need to. So again, looking at our public website here, if you're a researcher, you can always log in through our public website to access the researcher workbench. And if you've completed that 6-step process that I noted, you'll have a researcher workbench account and simply sign in order to access and analyze all of this data. Once you sign in, this will be the landing page. So this is what the researcher workbench looks like. As a researcher on the platform, you can see this is my landing page and that I've already been fairly active. I have one project which I own where I'm studying A1C distributions of type 2 diabetics. And then I'm a collaborator on a number of other projects where I'm working with teams to actually build support resources for researchers coming into the community. And because I've got a number of different projects that I'm actively working on, you'll notice here I have a recently accessed items section. This is familiar to many other computer programs you might use, where it allows me just to dive straight into different pieces of my projects that might have been working on most recently. Very importantly, even as a returning researcher to the Workbench, I'm always given tips about here's some helpful information in case I need a refresher on any piece of the Workbench, either a general overview, dives into specific tools or data, and even our support library. So I'll touch on a few more things in a bit, but you'll notice that we have built this library of short videos, which are great tools for new or returning researchers that may want to get a sense for the researcher Workbench. So now that we've just oriented a little bit at a high level to the researcher Workbench, let's talk about what it takes to start a project. It's as simple as clicking this little blue plus sign here. And then once you do that, you'll see the screen that I've screenshotted here at the left-hand side pop up. This is a form that you fill out. You name your workspace. You're asked to describe your primary purpose of your project, anticipated findings, etc. And we like to be very transparent with researchers at this stage that we want you to provide a meaningful description here. Wherever things are going to be publicly displayed, we tell you. And then what does this look like? This is an example of a project from Dr. Wallen at Scripps, where she was looking at COVID-19 mitigation behaviors. And so you can see that a lot of the information which you enter here as you create projects is made available on that research projects directory that I highlighted earlier in the slide. This is again all part of making sure that we're being transparent with our participants and our funders about how the program is being used. So we've talked a little bit about the workspaces, how you might create a new workspace. So if you look here at this card, HbA1c type 2 diabetics distributions, this is one of my workspaces. If I were to click on this little card here and open up a new workspace, you can see in my About tab that I can always look at that information that I entered. So here's what I entered previously about the purpose of this project. I can go back if my project changes over time and I learn new things. I can edit this description here. This is also where I can share my workspace with other collaborators. So you can see here that I have a number of different researchers who are collaborating on this project with me. And as the owner of the workspace, I have the ability to actually control their privileges. So some might have a write privilege, some might have a read-only privilege. So we allow some flexibility in how this information and this project is shared. So now going from the About tab, if you were to click over to the Data tab here, you'll notice that within my workspace, in this Data tab, I have a number of different tools. So I talked earlier about the Cohort Builder tool and the Dataset Builder tool. These tools can be accessed from that Data tab. The take home here is that we understand that this data set is already large. It's going to be growing and becoming more complex over time. And we like to provide you with tools that are simple point and click interfaces to help you sift through that information to find the data that is most relevant for your study. And so one thing that we know researchers really need to do is to be able to say, using my type 2 diabetes example, of all of us participants, who might have type 2 diabetes? And so using this Cohort Builder tool, you can look for participants that have a shared billing code or have a certain A1C value, or they might have a certain set of medications that they're on. And so this Cohort Builder tool allows you to combine that information to identify participants for your study in what we call a cohort. And now once you have your cohort of individuals that are likely to have type 2 diabetes, The data set builder is where you can pull in additional information that might be relevant to your study. So again, I might be interested in knowing, well, what medications were these participants on, or what were some of their particular lab values of interest. I might also be interested in studying their mental health, and I want to pull in data from a particular survey where mental health was covered. This tool allows me the flexibility of saying, here's the health information that I would like to have on the participants in my data set, and basically pull this from the much larger curated research data set into a smaller focused custom data set for my study. And this data set is something I can save to my workspace and then bring it in for analysis. Recognizing that a lot of the pieces of this platform might be new to researchers, the terms we use might be unfamiliar. We do make sure that we put, again, help information at your fingertips here. So you can often click on the side panel and access things like help tips to better understand what all the information on your screen might mean. So going back to our example, let's say that I've defined my cohort of participants that have type 2 diabetes. Now I've pulled in a data set specific to, let's say, their A1C and glucose values. I might want to do an analysis. And the analysis tab is where you can access all of the different, we call them Jupyter notebooks. These notebooks are an analysis tool. And I know that many of you on the call today might not be familiar with what a Jupyter notebook looks like. And so I wanted to put an example here on the screen today. We selected Jupyter notebooks because they allow you to do human readable analysis. So you can actually combine text that describes what you're doing in a study or an analysis with the program, so the code that's needed to actually run your analysis, as well as the results of that analysis all in one spot. And so this is one way that we're trying to support fair, reproducible science, because this enables us to essentially have a one-stop shop where myself as a researcher, my research team, and eventually, the broader research community can see exactly what I've done and what the results of my analysis were. And I want to make sure that in the interest of transparency, I highlight the fact that this is the first analysis tool that we're offering. And right now, we support analyses in the programming languages of R and Python. And I recognize that not all researchers may be familiar or have people on their team who are familiar with R or Python. We do know that there is, however, a large community of open source scientists that are contributing to these. And so our hope is that, number one, when you come into the platform, even if you yourself might not have experience programming in R or Python, that we've built a system that allows you to collaborate with a colleague, a data scientist, for instance, or a bioinformatician that can help program some of these analyses. Also, number two, recognizing that the program itself, people might not know exactly where to start. We've contributed a number of different help resources. So the screenshot that you can see here on the slide is actually part of our data fundamentals workspace that we publish and make available to all researchers within the researcher workbench. It's where our team has gone through and written out detailed examples of how to get started working with data in all of us, how to get started with different data types, for instance. And so we have all of these tutorials available for you when you come into the researcher workbench, and we welcome you to take anything from these example analyses and use them in your own work, hopefully giving you and your research teams a head start on your work. And so again, that sort of featured workspace, that library of tutorials that I described earlier, is one of several different support and help materials that we have available on our researcher workbench. In addition to that, we also have an entire support hub that you can access from the workbench. If you were just at any time, click this, what we call a hamburger menu, and then you can go into our support hub. You can see that we have a curated knowledge base that is searchable, and you can go through here search for helpful information on getting started, information on our privacy methodology, our data dictionary. You can ask questions of other researchers in a community forum, read through frequently asked questions that our help desk has received. And if at the end of the day, you're not getting what you need from this searchable knowledge base, we have a team of awesome trained experts who are humans at the end of the other line, available if you need to submit a request or ask a question or give us feedback on how to make this platform better. Another thing that this team does, which I think is incredibly helpful, every month we have new user orientation sessions that we offer, walking researchers to the platform. And then finally, we have biweekly office hours where we go through and make sure that you have an opportunity to ask us questions and give us feedback. So knowing that we're getting near the end of the presentation, I wanted to quickly move on to some pieces of what's next and leave at least 5 minutes for questions. So very quickly, I hope that today you've seen some of that fundamentals, the overview of the data types which are available, as well as our public website, that researcher workbench where you and your research team will be accessing and analyzing the data. But to really drive home a more concrete example of how researchers are using this platform, there's no better voice than the researchers themselves. And so we're excited to be on next Monday, giving a researcher's lens to the Research Hub, where Dr. Truesdale and Zhang will be going through their project and showing a specific example of how they've used the researcher workbench. And then the following Monday, bringing a slightly different approach to this, looking at a clinician researcher's lens. And I actually think these two are swapped here, so apologies. So on the 10th, we'll be doing a clinician's lens. On the 17th, we'll be doing the researcher's lens. And we're so excited to have on the 17th, Fornessa Randall and Paula Lozano, giving a view of how they as researchers are doing some wonderful collaborative research in health disparities. And so I guess I think I'm going to end it here and just say, we're in a beta phase. Right now we are growing our resources with you. We've launched something already. We're listening to you as a research community. We invite you to give us feedback on what we're doing and how we're doing so that we can learn, iterate, and grow over time as this program grows. Another thing is that while we know we have some limitations today where the researcher workbench only supports programming as an example in R or Python, and you have to have these two things, the ERA Commons account, as well as a DRA for access. We still hope that you as researchers can join us and help us grow this incredible resource over time. And so with that, I think I'm just going to go ahead and end and say thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. We'll hope that you go onto our public website, consider applying for access, and let's take some questions. So let's spend the next 5 minutes or so. If anybody has questions, we'd love to answer them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelsey, so much for this outstanding presentation. And I'll just say while people are putting their questions in the chat or getting ready to speak, places like CUNY, we could never amass 1 million diverse participants, all of their medical records, all of their biosamples. So this type of research is really an opportunity for us to democratize these very large databases and give everyone a chance to do the type of research that we would love to do, but we can't recruit at this scale or collect this type of and curate this type of data. So I think for places like PAGNI and HHS and CUNY, this is an incredible step forward in really letting us, do the types of equity research that we are, designed to do and that we're interested in. So let me open it up for questions. I think L. Samuels had a couple. I don't know if those got answered. And the upper level tiers will be released over time with increased security measures. So do others have questions? Akira, do you have a question or you just, let's see. If you like, you can put your questions in the chat, and I think you can see the type of data that's already available. I was mentioning to somebody that they are looking at a pediatric module in the not too distant future that's up and coming. Other thoughts or questions for the presenters? Yes, I agree. Bravo. Is it? Oh, yes. This is always a question. And everyone on the call has this question. So thank you, Dr. Samuels. Is it possible to propose additional data to be collected? This is a really big programmatic question. And I know there's a few other researchers on the phone, Dr. Hagel and others, who would love to see disaster preparedness information in there as well. Do you want to take a stab at that?
I'm happy. I'm happy to start, and then Courtney, if you want to chime in as well. I think, yes, the program is interested in hearing feedback from the researcher community. So we do love to hear from you on data types that are interesting to you, and sort of why, and maybe some of the challenges that you have in getting this data. So any context that you can paint around the value of this information. At large, the program has a big balancing act to do, trying to understand, of all the different data we could collect, which is the most valuable for our scientific partners and our participant partners. And so we take your feedback seriously, and then we bring it through a number of different mechanisms where we think through, of all of the data types we could collect, what might be the next priority, knowing that we are growing over time and that we will be releasing data. So I think for right now, if you want to just give us that feedback here, we're happy to take it back to the program. And Courtney, if you have any other information on how they can provide the program with that feedback.
Yeah, I just echo what you've just said so eloquently, and just to note that this is, our emphasis on co-designing this platform with the research community. We are absolutely open to feedback and recommendations. So please feel free to send our way.
And I noticed there's another example of a question here about imaging. Right now, we are not collecting imaging data, but it's on our roadmap. So it's one of the data types we know can it doesn't present a burden to our participants to collect that information if we're able to do it from existing electronic medical records. So we're interested in doing that, and we haven't done it yet.
So we're at the top of the hour. I hope you find this as exciting as I do. This was a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Kelsey and Courtney and all for joining us. Please, yes, we'll pick up this conversation about what other efforts are needed to get to 1 million at the next call. Please join us a week from today. We really look forward to welcoming all of you back at that time.